Good morning, dear student. Welcome to you in today's video lecture. Dear student, we had seen some features of utility in previous lecture. You know that utility has 10 features. Out of them, 5 features of utility we had seen in last lecture, and remaining 5 features will be discussed today. Dear student, we have seen first 5 features of utility, like utility is a relative concept, utility is a subjective concept, utility is ethically neutral concept, and it is differs from usefulness, and utility is differs from pleasure. These 5 features of utility we had seen in the last lecture. Now remaining 5 features will be discussed in today's lecture. So it is differs from satisfaction. Utility can be measured hypothetically. Then utility has multiple. Next, it is depend on intensity of wants, and last, utility is a base of demand. So these 5 features of utility will be learned in today's lecture. Dear student, utility means want satisfying power of commodity and services. We have seen the concept of utility in detail in that particular lecture. So today we will learn the features of utility. So 6 features of utility is differs from satisfaction. So concept of utility is differs from the concept of satisfaction. So student, we should know that first what is the concept of utility, and then what is the meaning of satisfaction. Then we may understand that how utility is differs from the concept of satisfaction. So utility means commodity and services to satisfy human wants. So want satisfying power of commodity is called as utility, but whereas satisfaction is the feeling of happiness realized by the consumer consumption of the commodity. So what is the satisfaction? Satisfaction is the feeling of happiness realized by the consumer from the consumption of the commodity. In another and satisfaction is the end result of the consumption. So utility is the cause of consumption, whereas satisfaction is the ending result of the consumption. So here we may take very easy example related to these features. So bike has utility, therefore we demand. Bike has utility, therefore we demand is because bike can satisfy our want of journey. So therefore it has utility. But actual satisfaction of the bike, when we will take, when we will drive it, then we may take actual satisfaction of the bike. But before driving it, it has utility. But satisfaction of the bike can be derived after using of that particular commodity, and therefore satisfaction is the ending result of the consumption, whereas utility is a starting point of the consumption. So here we have taken the example of bike has utility, no doubt. Before driving it we may take utility, but actual satisfaction of the bike can be obtained after driving it. It means after consumption of commodity we may take satisfaction. So here therefore utility is different from the concept of satisfaction. So satisfaction and utility both are different from each other. So it is the particular feature of utility. Then next feature of utility is known as utility is measured hypothetically. Utility can be measured hypothetically. In another word, hypothetical measurement of utility can be possible. So here we have seen that utility is a psychological concept. It is related with psychological attitude, psychological behavior, likes, dislikes, preferences, and choice of the consumer. So it is related with psychological attitude of the consumer, and therefore one commodity may derive utility to a particular person, but it may not derive utility to another person, because it is psychological concept, and therefore utility derived by consumer from cannot be measured in numerical numbers. What? Utility derived by consumer from a particular commodity cannot be measured in numerical numbers. Here we may take the example of water. When thirsty person drink a glass of water, he may get utility from the glass of water, but utility derived by him cannot be measured in numerical numbers, because it is related with psychological attitude, likes, dislikes, and preferences of the consumer. Actual measurement of utility in numerical numbers is not possible. It can be measured hypothetically only. So hypothetical measurement is possible of utility. It means we can say that he has positive utility from the water, he has zero utility from the water. In another word, water has negative utility. So here actual numerical measurement of utility is impossible, and therefore we may measure utility derived from the commodity in ordinal numbers only. We cannot measure it in cardinal numbers. So it is also the features of utility. So then next features of utility, it is multi-purpose. Utility is multi-purpose. It means commodity can satisfy. If a particular commodity, suppose he has purchased, it can be satisfy several wants of the consumer. Here we may take very easy example in our routine life. Electricity. So electricity in several uses. It means it has several utilities. Like electricity can be used for lighting, it can be used for fridge, it can be used for to make press. It means commodity can be put in several uses, and consumer can take utility from that commodity in several uses also. In another word, utility is multi-purpose. It has multi-purpose. So then we may take another example of milk also. So milk is a commodity which can be put in several uses, like it can be used for to make a tea, it can be used for drink, it can be used to make some sweet items also. So utility of commodity has multi-purpose. Utility of the commodity has multi-purpose. Sometimes commodity can be put in several uses and can get utility from each use of that particular commodity. In another word, we can say that utility is multi-purpose concept. Then next features of utility is depend on intensity of wants. What is the next features? Utility is depend on intensity of wants. The utility derived by consumer is depend on intensity of his wants. So intensity means urgency. What is intensity? Intensity means urgency of his want. If his want is more urgent, then utility from that commodity may be high. If consumer's want is more urgent or intensity of want have high degree, then utility of that commodity will be more. In another word, if intensity of want is less, then utility of that particular commodity will be less. So, utility derived by consumer from any commodity is depend on intensity of the wants. If intensity of want is more, then utility of that commodity will be more. And if intensity of want is less, then utility of that particular commodity will be less. So utility of the commodity is depend on intensity of the wants. Here we may take very easy example. So suppose a hungry person goes to eat the roti. Suppose hungry person goes to eat the roti. In another word, if he consume roti, so roti has more utility for hungry person. Roti has more utility for hungry person. But the person who is not hungry, he may not have utility in that roti. It means utility of the commodity. Utility of the commodity is depend on intensity of the wants. If hungriness of the consumer is more, then he may have more utility in roti. And if hungriness of the consumer is less, then he may have very less utility or zero utility in the roti. So utility of any commodity is depend on intensity of the wants of consumer. If his want is more urgent, then utility of commodity will be more. In another word, if his want is less urgent, then utility of the commodity will be less. Suppose here we may take another example also. Person, when he drinks a glass of water, he has more utility in glass of water. But the person who have already drink the water, so he may have less utility in the water. So utility of the commodity is depend on intensity of the wants. And then last features of utility, that is utility is the base of demand. So utility is a base of demand. So consumer will demand only those goods and services. Okay, consumer will demand only those goods and services which has utility to him. If a commodity does not have utility to him, then consumer will not be purchase that particular commodity. It means consumer will not demand for that particular commodity. It means demand of the consumer is totally depend on utility derived by consumer from that particular commodity. If a commodity has utility for consumer, then he may demand it. If a commodity does not have utility for consumer, then consumer will not demand that particular commodity. It means consumer's demand for a commodity is totally depend on utility derived by him from the commodity. If commodity has utility for him, then he will demand that particular commodity. If commodity does not have utility for him, then he will not demand that particular commodity. It means consumer's demand for commodity is depend on utility derived by him from that particular commodity. So in another word, we can say that it is the base of demand. Utility is the base of demand. Then here we may take very easy example in our routine life. Person has utility in medicine. Sick person has utility in medicine because medicine can satisfy his wants. So sick person has utility in medicine, therefore he will demand medicine. Therefore sick person will demand medicine. Common person will not demand medicine without any reason. So demand of medicine is depend on utility derived by consumer from that particular commodity. So he will demand it when he will be sick person. Then we may take example of books also. A literate person will demand the books. Literate person will demand the books because he has utility in books. But illiterate person will not demand books because he may not derive utility from the books. Why? Because illiterate person will not derive utility from the books, and therefore illiterate person will not demand the books. But literate person will demand books because he may get knowledge from the books. In other words, he may get utility from the books. So books will be demanded by literate person but will not be demanded by illiterate person. So demand of any commodity is totally depend on utility derived by consumer from that particular commodity, and therefore we can say that utility is the base of demand. Utility is the base of demand. So dear student, today we have seen 5 features of utility. First one, like utility is differs from satisfaction. It means utility and satisfaction are different from each other. Satisfaction is the uh, happiness realized by consumer from that particular commodity, whereas utility is a want satisfying power. Then utility cannot be measured in numerical numbers. So hypothetical measurement of utility, because it is psychological concept related with psychological attitude and behavior of the consumer. Then utility is multi-purpose. It means commodity may have many purpose uses. Then it is depend on intensity of wants. Utility of the commodity is depend on intensity of the wants. If want is more urgent or intensity of want is more, then utility will be more, and if intensity of want less, then utility from that commodity will be less. And last one is it is the base of demand. It means consumer will demand only those goods which has utility for him, and he will not demand those goods which does not have utility for him. It means utility is the base of demand. So in this way we have seen all the features of utility. Thank you, thank you, thank you.